My name is Ethan Parker. I am 32 years old, and for 5 years, my parents acted as though I no longer existed. They blocked my number. They returned birthday cards unopened. They removed my photographs from family albums. If anyone asked about me, they simply changed the subject. According to my parents, I had betrayed my younger sister, Chloe, and that betrayal was unforgivable. The worst part was that I never actually did the thing they accused me of. Not even close. But once my sister told her story, nobody cared about the truth anymore. They had already chosen who to believe. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. Chloe had always been the center of our family's universe. Growing up, she had a gift for making people want to protect her. Teachers adored her. Neighbors praised her. Relatives called her sweet, sensitive, and thoughtful. And to be fair, sometimes she really was. But there was another side to Chloe that very few people ever saw. Whenever she made a mistake, somehow someone else ended up taking the blame. Whenever she wanted something, she found a way to get it. And whenever the truth became inconvenient, she had no problem reshaping it. Unfortunately, our parents never noticed. Or maybe they noticed and simply chose not to. To them, Chloe could do no wrong. I was the older brother, which meant I was expected to understand, forgive, sacrifice, and move on. That pattern followed us through childhood. If Chloe broke something, I was told to be patient. If she forgot a responsibility, I was told to help her. If she created drama, I was told to keep the peace. I spent years convincing myself it was normal. Families are complicated. Nobody is perfect. That is what I told myself. Then came the lie that destroyed everything. It happened when I was 27. At the time, I was working for a regional software company and trying to build a future for myself. Life was not glamorous, but it was stable. Chloe, meanwhile, was going through a difficult period. She had accumulated significant debt, made several poor financial decisions, and was desperately trying to keep our parents from finding out. I knew some of what was happening because she occasionally called me when things became overwhelming. More than once, I helped her solve problems she created. More than once, I protected her from consequences. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was believing she would do the same for me. One Sunday afternoon, our parents called an emergency family meeting. The moment I walked into their living room, I knew something was wrong. My father stood near the fireplace with his arms crossed. My mother sat on the couch crying. Chloe occupied the chair beside her, eyes red and swollen as though she had been crying for hours. "What's going on?" I asked. Nobody answered immediately. Finally, my father pointed toward a chair. "Sit down." His voice carried a tone I had never heard before. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. I sat. My heart was already racing. Then Chloe spoke. "Why did you do it?" I frowned. "Do what?" Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "You know exactly what." I looked around the room completely confused. My mother refused to meet my eyes. My father looked furious. "Somebody tell me what's happening." Chloe inhaled shakily. Then she began telling a story. A story about private information she had supposedly shared with me. A story about trust. About betrayal. About humiliation. According to her, I had deliberately revealed sensitive details that caused serious personal consequences in her life. The accusation was shocking because it was entirely false. Every word of it. "That's not true," I said immediately. "None of that happened." Chloe cried harder. "See? He's lying even now." "I'm not lying." I turned toward my parents. "You know me. Think about this for a second. Why would I do something like that?" My mother finally spoke. "Chloe would never make this up." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What? She has no reason to lie." I stared at her. "And I do?" my father stepped forward. Enough. His face had turned red. We didn't call this meeting to debate facts. Debate facts? I could barely believe what I was hearing. Facts are exactly what we should be discussing. The facts are clear. My father pointed toward Chloe. Your sister trusted you. Then he pointed toward me. And you betrayed that trust. I spent the next hour trying to defend myself. Every explanation was dismissed. Every question was ignored. Every attempt to challenge the accusation only seemed to convince them I was guilty. The verdict had already been decided before I arrived. Eventually, my father stood and walked to the front door. He opened it. You need to leave. I stared at him. Dad. Leave. My mother continued crying. Chloe avoided eye contact. Something inside me broke. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just quietly. Like a rope snapping under years of tension. I stood slowly. You really believe her? Nobody answered. That silence told me everything. I walked toward the door. Just before stepping outside, I turned around one last time. I kept hoping someone would stop me. Someone would ask another question. Someone would say this was a misunderstanding. Instead, my father delivered the sentence that would echo in my head for years. As far as this family is concerned, he said, we only have one child now. The door closed behind me. And just like that, I lost my parents, my sister, and the family I thought I knew. What I did not know was that 5 years later, the same sister whose lie destroyed my life would be fighting for hers inside an emergency room. And somehow, after everything that happened, I would become the only person who could help her. The first few weeks after being cut off by my family felt unreal. Every morning I woke up expecting a text message from my mother or a phone call from my father telling me there had been some misunderstanding. Every day ended with silence. At first, I tried reaching out. I called my parents. My calls went straight to voicemail. I sent emails explaining my side of the story. They never replied. I even drove to their house one Saturday afternoon hoping to speak face to face. My father opened the door, saw me standing there, and closed it without saying a single word. That moment hurt more than the accusation itself. The accusation was a lie. But watching my own father look at me like a stranger made me realize something terrifying. They genuinely believed I was guilty. Or worse, they had decided that believing Chloe was easier than questioning her. After a month, I stopped trying. Pride had nothing to do with it. Survival did. Every attempt to reconnect only reopened the wound. I was 27 years old, completely on my own, and suddenly carrying the weight of losing my entire family. The loneliness was overwhelming. Holidays became the hardest part. Thanksgiving arrived first. For my entire life, Thanksgiving meant gathering around my parents' dining table. My mother would spend days preparing food. My father would complain about football while secretly enjoying every minute of it. Chloe would tell stories and somehow become the center of attention. It was messy, loud, and imperfect. Yet I had always assumed it would be there. That year, I spent Thanksgiving eating takeout Chinese food alone in a small apartment. I remember sitting by the window watching other families arrive at gatherings while trying not to think about what I had lost. Christmas was even worse. Every year since childhood, my mother had given each family member a personalized ornament. No matter how old we became, she never stopped. On Christmas Eve, I found myself staring at the ornament she had given me the previous year. A simple glass design with my name painted across the front. I wondered if she still thought about me. I wondered if she missed me. Then I remembered my father closing the door in my face and realized the answer probably did not matter. Life, however, has a strange way of forcing people forward. Rent still had to be paid. Bills still arrived. Work still demanded attention. I threw myself into my career because it was the only thing I could control. During the day, I worked for the software company. At night, I began developing ideas for a healthcare technology platform I had been considering for years. It was nothing revolutionary at first. Just a concept designed to improve communication between patients and medical providers. Most people would have considered it a side project. For me, it became therapy. Every hour spent building something productive was an hour I did not spend replaying family memories. Months passed. Then a year. Gradually, the pain stopped feeling sharp. It never disappeared completely, but it became manageable. Around that time, something unexpected happened. I met Emma. We first crossed paths at a technology conference in Chicago. She worked in healthcare administration and attended one of my presentations. Afterward, she approached me with questions about my project. What started as a 10-minute conversation somehow turned into a 3-hour dinner. Emma had an ability to make people feel understood. She listened carefully. She asked thoughtful questions. Most importantly, she never treated me like someone who needed fixing. For months, I avoided telling her about my family. Whenever the topic surfaced, I changed the subject. Eventually, she noticed. One evening while we walked through a park near her apartment, she stopped and looked at me. "You talk about your work constantly," she said. "You talk about your friends. You talk about your goals. But you never talk about your family." I laughed awkwardly. "There's not much to say." She studied me for a moment. "That isn't true." For some reason, I told her everything. The accusation. The confrontation. The years of silence. The complete rejection. By the time I finished, I expected sympathy. Maybe even pity. Instead, Emma asked one simple question. "Did you do what they accused you of?" "No." "Then why are you carrying their judgment as though it's yours?" The question stayed with me long after that conversation ended. Because she was right. Even after everything, part of me still behaved as though I needed to prove my innocence. As though my value depended on convincing my family they had made a mistake. Over time, Emma helped me see something important. I could not control what my parents believed. I could not force Chloe to tell the truth. I could not rewrite the past. But I could decide what happened next. 2 years later, we got married. By then, my healthcare platform had begun attracting attention from investors. What started as a side project evolved into a legitimate business. Hospitals signed contracts. Clinics adopted our software. Revenue increased. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Yet despite all the progress, one question continued to haunt me. Why? Why had Chloe lied? What had she been protecting? The accusation never made sense. The details never fit together. Occasionally, I received small updates through my Uncle David, the only member of the family who still spoke to me. He never took sides publicly. He never pressured me to reconcile. But every few months, he would call and check on me. During one of those conversations, he mentioned something strange. Chloe was having financial difficulties. Serious ones. Apparently, she had accumulated substantial debt years earlier and continued making questionable decisions. The information immediately caught my attention. Not because I wanted her to fail. Because the timeline matched. The problems had started shortly before she accused me. For the first time, I wondered whether the lie had been connected to something much bigger than family drama. Unfortunately, I had no way to prove it. So I moved forward with my life. 5 years passed. My company grew beyond anything I imagined. Emma and I bought our first home. We built a future together. Most days, I rarely thought about my parents anymore. Then one night, just after midnight, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I would have ignored it. Something told me not to. I answered. "Hello?" For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then a woman's voice finally broke the silence. "Is this Ethan Parker?" "Yes." The next words changed everything. "Mr. Parker, I'm calling from St. Matthew's Medical Center. Your sister has been admitted to the emergency room." For several seconds, I thought the hospital had called the wrong person. I stood in the dark kitchen holding my phone while Emma watched from across the room. The digital clock on the microwave read 12:17 a.m. Everything about the situation felt surreal. 5 years. 5 entire years without a single conversation. 5 years without a birthday message, holiday card, or apology. And now a hospital was calling me in the middle of the night about my sister. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "Why are you calling me?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "Mr. Parker, your parents listed you as an emergency family contact." I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because it made absolutely no sense. My parents had spent half a decade pretending I did not exist. Yet somehow my name remained in a hospital file. There must be a mistake. Your information was confirmed multiple times. The nurse sounded exhausted. "We understand this is an unusual situation, but we were asked to reach you immediately." Emma slowly lowered her coffee mug and studied my expression. She could tell something was wrong. "What happened to my sister?" I asked. Another pause. "I'm not authorized to discuss medical details over the phone. However, her condition is serious." Serious. The word echoed in my mind long after the call ended. 10 minutes later, I sat at the dining table staring at nothing while Emma remained quietly beside me. Eventually she reached across and squeezed my hand. "What are you thinking?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know." And for once, that was the truth. Part of me felt angry. Another part felt numb. A small part felt guilty for not immediately rushing to the hospital. Mostly, I felt confused. "You don't owe them anything," Emma said carefully. "I know. But..." I looked toward the window. "But I still want to know what happened." She nodded. "Then find out." The next morning, I called the hospital. After several transfers, I finally reached a physician willing to provide limited information. Her name was Dr. Rachel Morgan. She sounded professional and direct. "Your sister is currently stable," she explained. "However, she remains under observation." "Can you tell me what happened?" "Not without authorization." I rubbed my forehead. "Then why exactly was I contacted?" Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that comes before someone chooses their words carefully. "Mr. Parker, I believe it would be best if you came in person." That answer only created more questions. Around noon, I received another call. This time the caller ID displayed a familiar name. Uncle David. We had spoken periodically over the years, but never frequently. The moment I answered, I knew something was different. "You heard?" he asked. "The hospital called me." He sighed heavily. "I figured they would." "What's going on?" Another long pause. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." For several seconds, all I heard was breathing. Finally, he spoke. "Your parents are falling apart." The statement surprised me more than I expected. In my mind, my parents remained frozen in time. Strong. Certain. Unshakable. It had never occurred to me that age and stress might have changed them. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad." His voice softened. "Ethan, they've spent 5 years building their lives around Chloe. That was their choice." "I know." He paused again. "But things haven't been good." Over the next 20 minutes, Uncle David revealed information I had never heard before. Apparently Chloe's financial problems had grown far worse than anyone realized. Debt had accumulated. Relationships had failed. Several risky decisions created additional pressure. My parents spent years helping her recover. Then another setback arrived. Then another. Then another. The more he talked, the more confused I became. Because none of it sounded like the image my parents projected. They always portrayed Chloe as successful, stable, thriving. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. Uncle David laughed sadly. Because nobody wanted to admit the truth. After the call ended, I spent the rest of the afternoon distracted. Meetings blurred together. Emails went unanswered. Even Emma noticed my focus disappearing. By evening, she gently closed my laptop. You're going. It wasn't a question. Maybe. She raised an eyebrow. Ethan. I smiled despite myself. Fine. Probably. She sat beside me. You're not going for them. Then who am I going for? Yourself. The answer surprised me. She continued. 5 years ago, they made a choice. You can't control that. But if you stay home wondering what happened, you'll carry those questions forever. Deep down, I knew she was right. The next morning, I drove to St. Matthew's Medical Center. The entire trip felt strangely familiar. The hospital sat on the opposite side of the city, yet every mile seemed connected to memories I had spent years trying to forget. By the time I arrived, my stomach felt tight. The emergency department looked exactly like every hospital in America. Busy nurses. Ringing phones. Families waiting anxiously in plastic chairs. Yet for me, it felt like walking into another chapter of a story I thought had ended years earlier. At the reception desk, I gave my name. The receptionist's expression changed immediately. One moment, please. She picked up a phone and spoke quietly. Less than 2 minutes later, Dr. Rachel Morgan appeared. She introduced herself and guided me toward a private consultation room. Something about her demeanor instantly put me on edge. She seemed relieved to see me. That made no sense. We entered the room and closed the door. Dr. Morgan sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she folded her hands and looked directly into my eyes. Mr. Parker, she said carefully, before we discuss your sister's condition, there's something important you need to understand. My pulse quickened. What is it? She hesitated. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. Based on the medical information we have right now, you may be the only person in your family who can help her. For several seconds, I simply stared at Dr. Rachel Morgan. The words did not make sense. Not because I misunderstood them. Because I understood them perfectly. I'm sorry, I said slowly. What exactly do you mean by that? Dr. Morgan folded her hands on the table. She clearly handled difficult conversations every day, but even she seemed cautious. There are certain situations where a close family member may be uniquely positioned to assist with treatment decisions or medical options. And my parents can't? She hesitated. At the moment, I cannot discuss specific details without additional authorization. Frustration immediately surfaced. Then why bring me here? She sighed. Because your parents requested it. That answer surprised me even more. 5 years ago, my parents wanted nothing to do with me. 5 years ago, they erased me from their lives. Now they were asking for my help. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Where are they? I asked. Dr. Morgan glanced toward the hallway. They're here. My stomach tightened instantly. I had spent years imagining what it might feel like to see my parents again. In those imagined scenarios, I was always prepared. Confident. Successful. Unaffected. Reality felt very different. A few minutes later, Dr. Morgan escorted me down a quiet corridor toward a family consultation area. Every step increased the tension building inside my chest. Then I saw them. For a moment, I almost did not recognize them. My father sat near a window staring at the floor. My mother occupied a chair beside him. Both looked older than I remembered. Not just older. tired, exhausted. As though life had been steadily removing pieces of them for years. When my mother noticed me, her eyes widened immediately. My father slowly looked up. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched between us like a bridge nobody knew how to cross. Finally, my mother stood. Tears appeared almost instantly. Ethan. Hearing my name from her felt strange. Familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Hi, Mom. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. She took a small step forward. Then stopped. It was obvious she wanted to hug me. It was equally obvious she did not know whether she had the right. My father remained seated. Thank you for coming. The sentence shocked me. Not because it was kind. Because it sounded humble. I had never heard my father speak that way before. The hospital said Chloe is stable. He nodded. For now. Nobody seemed sure what to say next. 5 years of silence does not disappear in a single conversation. Eventually, Dr. Morgan guided us into a private room. Once the door closed, she reviewed several medical charts. Your sister is receiving excellent care, she explained. However, there are complications we are evaluating. My father leaned forward immediately. Is she going to be okay? Dr. Morgan chose her words carefully. We're optimistic, but additional testing is needed. Then she looked toward me. Mr. Parker, I would like to discuss a few family history questions. That request confused me. Family history? Yes. For the next 15 minutes, she asked questions about grandparents, medical conditions, genetics, and various health issues. Some I could answer. Others I could not. My parents occasionally filled in details. The entire conversation felt oddly normal. We were sitting in a hospital discussing family history like an ordinary family. Except we were not an ordinary family. We were people separated by 5 years of resentment pretending none of it existed. Eventually, Dr. Morgan left the room to consult with another physician. The moment the door closed, the silence returned. My mother stared at her hands. My father looked toward the ceiling. Nobody moved. Then my mother surprised me. You look good. I blinked. What? You look healthy. Her voice trembled. Happy. I did not know how to respond. The compliment felt sincere. It also felt 5 years late. Thanks. Another silence followed. Finally, my father cleared his throat. David told us your company is doing well. Uncle David. Of course. It's growing. That's good. I nodded politely. The conversation sounded like strangers making small talk in an elevator. None of us knew how to discuss the real issue sitting between us. Then my mother quietly asked the question I had been expecting since arriving. How have you been? The answer should have been simple. Fine. Successful. Married. Stable. Yet none of those words captured the truth. I've had good years, I said carefully. And difficult ones. Tears appeared in her eyes again. I'm sorry. The room froze. My father looked toward her immediately. So did I. 5 years. 5 years without a single apology. 5 years without acknowledgement. 5 years without accountability. And now those 2 words hung in the air. I'm sorry. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Part of me wanted to accept the apology. Another part wanted to ask where it had been all this time. Before I could answer, a knock interrupted us. Uncle David entered the room carrying a cup of coffee. The moment he saw me, he smiled sadly. You came. Looks that way. He sat beside me and lowered his voice. There's something you need to know. Instantly, I could tell the conversation was important. My parents seemed uncomfortable. Almost nervous. Uncle David glanced toward the door to ensure nobody else was listening. Then he leaned closer. The story you were told 5 years ago. He paused. It wasn't the whole story. My pulse quickened. What does that mean? He looked directly into my eyes. I've stayed quiet long enough. The room became completely silent. Even my parents seemed unable to interrupt. For years, I had wondered why Chloe lied. For years, I had searched for an explanation that made sense. And judging by the expression on Uncle David's face, I was finally about to get one. Ethan, he said softly, your sister wasn't protecting herself from embarrassment. He paused again. She was hiding something much bigger. The room remained silent after Uncle David's words. Even the sounds from the hallway outside seemed distant. For years, I had imagined learning the truth. I had imagined discovering some misunderstanding or missing detail that explained everything. But judging by the expression on his face, this was something far worse. What was she hiding? I asked. Uncle David glanced toward my parents before answering. My mother looked down immediately. My father stared at the table. Neither interrupted. Neither objected. That alone told me more than words ever could. 5 years ago, Uncle David began, Chloe was in serious financial trouble. I nodded slowly. That part one already suspected. How serious? Over $200,000 in debt. My eyes widened. What? He nodded grimly. Credit cards. Personal loans. Several failed investments. Some money borrowed from people she should never have borrowed from. The number was staggering. Chloe had always spent freely, but I never imagined anything close to that scale. Mom and Dad knew? My father finally spoke. Not at first. His voice sounded exhausted. We found out later. Uncle David continued. Back then, Chloe was desperate. She needed someone to blame for certain financial decisions. Someone who could redirect attention away from what was really happening. My pulse quickened. You're saying the accusation against me created a distraction. The words hit like a physical blow. Not because I was surprised. Because hearing it confirmed aloud changed everything. For years I had wondered whether there was some hidden reason behind Chloe's lie. Now I finally had one. A terrible one. But a reason nonetheless. She destroyed my life to protect herself. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The silence confirmed it. I looked toward my parents. Did you know? My mother's eyes filled with tears. Not then. When? She struggled to answer. My father stepped in. About 18 months later. The room spun slightly. 18 months? I repeated. You found out the accusation wasn't true and never contacted me? My mother broke down completely. We didn't know how. For a moment, I honestly could not believe what I was hearing. 5 years of silence. 18 months after learning the truth. No phone call. No letter. No apology. Nothing. You didn't know how? My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. Mom, you had my number. Tears streamed down her face. We were ashamed. You should have been. The words escaped before I could stop them. Nobody argued. Nobody defended themselves. My father looked older than I had ever seen him. For the first time in my life, he seemed like a man carrying weight he could no longer hide. I failed you, he said quietly. The admission stunned me. Growing up, my father never admitted mistakes. Not publicly. Not privately. Yet here he was. When we learned the truth, I should have called. He swallowed hard. I should have come find you myself. But you didn't. No. His honesty somehow hurt more than excuses would have. Because there was no argument left. No debate. No misunderstanding. Just a terrible choice that could never be undone. Before anyone could continue, the consultation room door opened. Dr. Rachel Morgan stepped inside carrying a tablet. Her expression immediately told me something had changed. I apologize for interrupting. She looked around the room. I need to update everyone. Instantly, every conversation stopped. My mother wiped her eyes. My father sat upright. What happened? Dr. Morgan pulled up several medical charts. We've completed additional testing. The room grew tense. Your sister's condition is more complicated than we initially believed. My stomach tightened. Despite everything, hearing those words still affected me. Chloe was my sister. The history between us was painful, but it did not erase decades of shared memories. Dr. Morgan continued carefully. We identified a genetic factor that appears to be contributing to her current medical crisis. She turned toward me. Which is why your family history is so important. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? The doctor exchanged a glance with another physician standing outside the room. Then she answered. Because based on the information we've gathered, you may possess information, or biological compatibility, that no one else in your immediate family can provide. Confusion spread across the room. Even my parents looked lost. I don't understand, I said. Dr. Morgan nodded. That's understandable. We are still confirming several details. She hesitated before continuing. However, there is another issue that requires immediate attention. My pulse accelerated again. What issue? The doctor looked directly at me. Your sister regained consciousness briefly. Every person in the room froze. My mother immediately stood. Can we see her? Dr. Morgan shook her head. Not yet. Why not? My father asked. The doctor's expression softened. Because when she woke up, she requested one person specifically. Silence. Complete silence. Somehow, I already knew the answer before she spoke. Who? My mother whispered. Dr. Morgan turned toward me. She asked for Ethan. For a moment, nobody in the room spoke. Even Dr. Morgan seemed to recognize how strange the situation was. My sister had spent 5 years helping destroy my relationship with our family. She had lied about me, watched me get cut off, and never once tried to correct the record. Yet the first person she asked for after regaining consciousness was me. Are you sure? I asked. Dr. Morgan nodded. She was only awake briefly, but she was very specific. My mother looked stunned. My father looked equally confused. Uncle David simply watched me carefully. It felt as though everyone was waiting for my reaction. The truth was, I did not know what I felt. Anger was there. Hurt was there. Curiosity was definitely there. But beneath all of it sat one question. Why now? Why ask for me after 5 years of silence? Dr. Morgan glanced toward the hallway. She's resting again, but if she wakes up later, we may allow a short visit. I nodded slowly. Okay. The doctor left the room, and the silence immediately returned. Eventually, my mother spoke. You don't have to do this. I looked at her. Do what? Tears filled her eyes again. You don't have to help us. The word "us" caught my attention. Not Chloe. Not your sister. Us. For the first time, my mother sounded like someone who understood exactly how much damage had been done. I'm not here for revenge, I said quietly. My father lowered his gaze. Nobody responded. Several hours passed. During that time, I learned more truth than I had during the previous 5 years combined. Uncle David finally revealed details he had hidden for a long time. According to him, Chloe's financial problems had become catastrophic shortly before she accused me. She had borrowed money from multiple sources, hidden account statements, and manipulated information to keep our parents from discovering the extent of the damage. Then one mistake threatened to expose everything. Instead of accepting responsibility, she created a different story. A story big enough to redirect attention. A story that required a villain. Me. Why didn't you stop it? I asked Uncle David. He looked away. Because I didn't have proof. But you suspected. Yes. His honesty stung. Everyone had seen pieces of the truth. Nobody had done enough to stop it. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, my father finally stood and walked toward the window. For several seconds, he simply stared outside. Then he spoke without turning around. The worst part isn't what she did. His voice sounded older than I remembered. The worst part is realizing how quickly I believed it. Nobody interrupted. A father is supposed to protect his children. He swallowed hard. I never even gave you a chance. Hearing those words affected me more than I expected. For years, I imagined confronting him. Yelling. Demanding answers. Instead, I found myself listening to a broken man describe his own failure. Before I could respond, another knock sounded at the door. Dr. Morgan returned. This time her expression was different. More serious. She woke up again. My mother immediately stood. Can we see her? The doctor hesitated. Then she looked directly at me. She only wants Ethan. The room became completely silent. Again. My mother slowly sat back down. My father looked toward the floor. Neither argued. Neither protested. They understood. Whatever Chloe wanted to say, it was meant for me. Dr. Morgan guided me through several hallways toward a private recovery room. The walk felt strangely surreal. 5 years earlier, I would have done almost anything to speak to my sister. Now I was walking into a conversation I never wanted. When we reached the room, the doctor paused outside the door. She's weak, she explained. Please keep the conversation short. I nodded. Then I stepped inside. Chloe looked nothing like the person I remembered. The confident, charismatic younger sister who always controlled every room was gone. She appeared exhausted. Pale. Fragile. Medical equipment surrounded her bed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then her eyes met mine. Almost immediately, tears appeared. Hi, Ethan. Her voice cracked. I stood near the doorway. Hi. More silence. Finally, she laughed softly through the tears. I guess this is awkward. I did not respond. There was nothing to say. She looked down at the blanket covering her lap. You look good. The exact same words my mother had used earlier. This time they felt even stranger. What did you want? I asked. The question hung between us. Chloe closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, the confidence was gone. Only regret remained. I wanted to tell you something before it was too late. My pulse quickened. For 5 years, I had waited for an explanation. 5 years of unanswered questions. 5 years of wondering why. Chloe inhaled slowly. Then she looked directly into my eyes. You were innocent. The room seemed to freeze. Even though I already knew the accusation was false, hearing her admit it felt different. Real. Final. I know. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. No. You don't understand. Her voice trembled. What I did was worse than you think. I felt my stomach tighten. Worse? After everything I had already learned, I could not imagine what that meant. Chloe glanced toward the door as though gathering courage. Then she looked back at me. There are things Mom and Dad still don't know. She paused. And if I don't tell them soon, they may never find out. For several seconds, I simply stared at Chloe. The machines beside her bed continued their steady rhythm while her words echoed inside my head. There are things Mom and Dad still don't know. After everything that had already been revealed, I could not imagine what else remained hidden. "What are you talking about?" I asked quietly. Chloe looked toward the window. Shame filled her expression. Not embarrassment. Not discomfort. Genuine shame. The kind that settles into a person after years of avoiding the truth. The debt wasn't the real reason I lied. My stomach tightened. Then what was? Tears rolled down her face again. Jealousy. I blinked. Of all the explanations I expected, that was not one of them. Jealousy? She nodded weakly. You were finally building something for yourself. The room remained silent. I don't understand. Chloe laughed bitterly. Of course you don't. You never saw yourself the way everyone else did. Her voice trembled. Even after Mom and Dad cut you off, Uncle David kept talking about how hardworking you were. People at family gatherings kept asking about you. They wanted updates. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does. She closed her eyes briefly. You spent your entire life thinking I was the favorite. Because you were. Yes. She opened her eyes again. But favorites become trapped too. The statement caught me off guard. Chloe continued before I could respond. Everyone expected me to succeed. Everyone expected me to be perfect. Every mistake felt catastrophic because nobody believed I was capable of making them. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister differently. Not as the villain of the story. Not as the victim either. Just a deeply flawed person who spent years making terrible decisions. When my financial problems started, she continued, I was terrified. Her hands trembled beneath the hospital blanket. I knew Mom and Dad would be disappointed. I knew people would finally see me as a failure. She looked directly at me. And then I heard Uncle David talking about your promotion. I felt a chill run through me. What does that have to do with anything? Fresh tears appeared instantly. Because for the first time, somebody was proud of you instead of me. The room went silent again. Every word felt heavier than the last. So you blamed me? She nodded. At first, I only wanted sympathy. Her voice cracked. Then people started believing me. I looked away. 5 years. 5 years destroyed because one lie grew larger than she intended. Why didn't you tell the truth? I asked. The question escaped before I could stop it. Chloe immediately broke down. Because every day made it harder. Her shoulders shook. The longer it went on, the worse it became. Then Mom and Dad cut you off completely. After that, I was trapped. You weren't trapped. My voice hardened. You made a choice. She flinched but did not argue. Because she knew I was right. Several moments passed before she spoke again. There's something else. My pulse quickened. Apparently there was always something else. Chloe glanced toward the door. 18 months after everything happened, I told Mom. I froze. What? Not all of it. She swallowed hard. But enough. Suddenly, pieces began falling into place. My parents learned the accusation was false 18 months later. Not because they discovered it themselves. Because Chloe told them. You admitted it? She nodded slowly. I couldn't live with it anymore. My chest tightened. And they still never called me. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. Dad wanted to. That surprised me. What? Mom too. She looked down. But I begged them not to. The words landed harder than anything else. Harder than the lie. Harder than the betrayal. Because even after learning the truth, Chloe had actively prevented reconciliation. Why? I whispered. She covered her face. Because I was selfish. There was no defense. No excuse. No justification. Just honesty. Brutal, painful honesty. Before I could respond, the door opened unexpectedly. My mother stepped into the room. She had probably intended to check on Chloe. Instead, she froze immediately. Chloe looked up. Their eyes met. Something passed between them instantly. Fear. Real fear. Mom. My mother slowly approached the bed. I heard enough. Her voice barely worked. Chloe's face drained of color. Apparently she had not realized the door was partially open. My father entered moments later. The expression on his face told me he had heard everything too. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. 5 years of lies suddenly stood exposed in the middle of a hospital room. My mother looked completely shattered. You told us it was true. Chloe started crying again. Mom. You watched us lose him. The pain in my mother's voice felt almost unbearable. You watched us abandon your brother. My father remained silent, but tears appeared in his eyes for the first time in my entire life. I had never seen my father cry. Not once. Not at funerals. Not during tragedies. Never. Yet there he stood staring at the daughter he spent years protecting. Finally, he looked toward me. The guilt on his face was impossible to miss. Ethan. His voice broke. There isn't an apology big enough for this. The room became completely silent. For years, I thought this moment would feel satisfying. Vindicating. Like justice. Instead, it felt tragic. Because nobody wins when a family destroys itself. Before anyone could say another word, an alarm suddenly sounded from one of the medical monitors. Nurses rushed into the room almost immediately. Dr. Morgan appeared seconds later. The atmosphere changed instantly. Family drama no longer mattered. The medical emergency had returned. As staff surrounded Chloe's bed, Dr. Morgan turned toward us. Her expression was serious. Very serious. Everyone needs to step outside. My mother looked terrified. What's happening? Dr. Morgan hesitated only briefly. Then she delivered the sentence that froze all of us in place. We're running out of time to make a critical treatment decision. Everything after that happened quickly. Nurses moved around Chloe's bed with practiced urgency while doctors reviewed charts and test results. My mother stood frozen near the doorway. My father looked as though someone had drained all the strength from his body. 5 years of lies had just collapsed around us, and now we were facing something even bigger. The possibility of losing Chloe entirely. Dr. Morgan eventually guided the family back into the consultation room. The moment she entered, I knew the news was serious. Medical professionals develop a certain expression when they need to explain difficult realities. She wore that expression now. We've confirmed the results, she said carefully. Nobody interrupted. Your sister's condition is linked to a rare hereditary complication that was not identified earlier. My father leaned forward. Can you treat it? Yes. Dr. Morgan nodded. But treatment decisions need to be made immediately. The room became silent. She continued explaining various options, medical procedures, risks, and potential outcomes. Some of it was technical. Some of it was impossible for a non-medical person to fully understand. What mattered was the conclusion. Time was running short. Then Dr. Morgan looked directly at me. Mr. Parker, there is another reason we contacted you. I already knew something was coming. What is it? Based on preliminary testing, you appear to possess a biological compatibility that could become important if additional intervention becomes necessary. My mother covered her mouth. My father closed his eyes. I simply stared at the doctor. You're saying I'm the best candidate? Potentially. She chose her words carefully. We are still confirming details, but yes. The irony was impossible to ignore. 5 years earlier, my family decided I was disposable. 5 years later, I had become the person they needed most. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone in the room understood the reality. My mother immediately started crying. "This isn't fair." The statement surprised me. Not because she was wrong. Because it was the first completely honest thing anyone had said all day. No, it was not fair. It was not fair that Chloe lied. It was not fair that my parents believed her. It was not fair that 5 years of my life disappeared because nobody bothered to ask questions. It was not fair that reconciliation only became possible because of a medical crisis. None of it was fair. Yet fairness had nothing to do with the decision sitting in front of me. Several hours later, I found myself alone in a quiet hospital corridor. Emma had arrived by then. The moment she stepped into the building, I felt myself relax slightly. She listened patiently while I explained everything. The lie. The confession. My parents learning the truth. Chloe's condition. By the time I finished, we were sitting together near a large window overlooking the city. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I looked out at the traffic below. "I don't know." That answer had become a recurring theme throughout the week. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. You've spent years proving that you're not the person they claimed you were." I looked at her. She continued. "Don't become that person now." The statement stayed with me. Because deep down, I knew exactly what she meant. I had every reason to walk away. Every reason to say no. Nobody would blame me. Most people would probably support the decision. After all, my family had abandoned me first. Yet every time I imagined refusing, something felt wrong. Not because my parents deserved forgiveness. Not because Chloe deserved rescue. Because I deserved better than carrying bitterness for the rest of my life. Late that evening, Dr. Morgan returned with final recommendations. Several decisions needed to be made. Paperwork needed signatures. Additional procedures needed approval. Everyone looked toward me. Not because I controlled everything. But because my participation mattered. My father stood slowly. For several seconds, he seemed unable to find words. Then he looked directly at me. "I know I have no right to ask anything from you." His voice shook. "Not after what I've done." My mother wiped away tears beside him. "But if there's any chance." She could not finish the sentence. She did not need to. I understood. The room fell silent. 5 years of pain stood on one side of the scale. One human life stood on the other. Finally, I exhaled. "I'll help." My mother's knees nearly gave out. My father lowered his head. Nobody celebrated. Nobody smiled. The moment was too heavy for that. But something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Something else. A decision. A choice about the kind of person I wanted to be. Over the next 24 hours, the hospital moved forward with its treatment plan. Doctors worked continuously. Nurses monitored every detail. Family members waited anxiously. The uncertainty was exhausting. During that time, I spoke with my parents more than I had during the previous 5 years combined. The conversations were awkward. Painful. Honest. My father admitted mistakes he had spent decades avoiding. My mother described the guilt she carried every day after learning the truth. Neither expected immediate forgiveness. For the first time, they seemed willing to accept responsibility instead. Then came the longest night of all. Shortly after midnight, Dr. Morgan entered the waiting area. Everyone stood immediately. Her expression was impossible to read. My pulse hammered inside my chest. My mother gripped my father's hand. The doctor stopped in front of us. Then, for the first time all week, she smiled. The procedure was successful. Relief hit the room like a wave. My mother broke down crying. My father covered his face. Uncle David sat heavily in the nearest chair. I closed my eyes and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Chloe was alive. After everything, she was alive. A few moments later, my father turned toward me. Tears filled his eyes again. You saved her. I shook my head. The doctors saved her. He slowly nodded. Then he said something I never expected to hear. Something I had waited years for without even realizing it. No, Ethan. His voice cracked. You saved all of us. The following weeks passed slowly. Chloe remained in the hospital longer than anyone expected, but each day brought small improvements. The doctors were encouraged. The nurses were optimistic. Most importantly, Chloe was alive. That fact alone felt remarkable considering how uncertain everything had seemed only days earlier. Yet while her physical recovery progressed, the emotional aftermath was only beginning. Some wounds heal with time. Others require honesty. And our family had accumulated 5 years' worth of damage. A few days after the procedure, Chloe asked to speak with all of us together. The request immediately made everyone nervous. My parents sat quietly near her hospital bed. Uncle David stood by the window. I occupied a chair near the door. Nobody seemed sure what this conversation would bring. Chloe looked healthier than before, but the guilt remained visible. It had become part of her expression. Finally, she cleared her throat. I owe all of you the truth. Nobody interrupted. Not part of it. Tears formed in her eyes. All of it. Over the next hour, she explained everything. The debt. The panic. The fear of disappointing our parents. The jealousy she carried for years. The lie she created. The moments she could have corrected it but chose not to. The times she watched the situation grow worse and still remained silent. It was painful to hear. Not because the details shocked me. Because they confirmed how many opportunities existed to stop the damage before it spread. By the time she finished, nobody had dry eyes. Not even my father. Chloe looked directly at me. I don't expect forgiveness. Her voice trembled. Honestly, I don't deserve it. I considered her words carefully. Forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. She nodded immediately. I know. What happened changed my life. Fresh tears rolled down her face. I know. And I can't pretend it didn't happen. I know. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, I believed she truly understood the consequences of her actions. Not because she felt guilty. Because she stopped making excuses. Several days later, Chloe was discharged from the hospital. The recovery process would continue for months, but the immediate danger had passed. Life gradually returned to something resembling normal. At least as normal as our situation allowed. My parents began reaching out regularly. At first, the conversations were brief. Awkward. Careful. Nobody knew how to rebuild a relationship that had been shattered so completely. Some days the effort felt worthwhile. Other days it felt impossible. One afternoon, my father invited me to lunch. The invitation alone felt unusual. Growing up, most conversations with him involved expectations, advice, or criticism. Personal discussions were rare. We met at a small restaurant overlooking the river. For a while, neither of us spoke about the past. Eventually, he set down his coffee cup and looked directly at me. I've spent 5 years asking myself the wrong question. I waited. I kept asking how Chloe could lie. He shook his head. The real question was why I was willing to believe the worst about my own son. The honesty surprised me. Even now. He continued. Good parents are supposed to protect their children. His eyes lowered. Instead, I judged one without listening. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I answered with the most honest response I could give. I can't change what happened. He nodded slowly. Neither can I. But we can decide what happens next. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps. Not because everything was fixed. Because progress had finally become possible. Over the following months, our family continued rebuilding. Slowly. Imperfectly. Real life rarely delivers dramatic endings where every problem disappears. Trust returns one conversation at a time. One action at a time. One difficult choice at a time. Some days were easier than others. Some old wounds resurfaced unexpectedly. Yet the effort continued. Meanwhile, life moved forward. My company continued growing. Emma and I celebrated another wedding anniversary. Chloe focused on her recovery and began taking responsibility for her financial situation. My parents started attending family counseling. Nobody became perfect overnight. But everyone became more honest. About a year after the hospital crisis, our family gathered for Thanksgiving. The same holiday that once left me eating takeout alone in a small apartment. This time, things felt different. Not because the past had disappeared. Because nobody was pretending it had never happened. A photograph sat on the dining room shelf showing our family from years earlier. Looking at it, I realized something important. The person in that picture spent his life seeking approval from people who were incapable of giving it. The person sitting at the table now no longer needed that approval. Losing my family had taught me independence. Building a life afterward had taught me confidence. And choosing compassion when revenge would have been easier taught me something even more valuable. Character is revealed when nobody would blame you for walking away. Later that evening, after everyone else left the table, my mother approached me quietly. "There's something I've wanted to tell you." I smiled. "What is it?" Tears appeared in her eyes. "We're proud of you." 5 simple words. Words I had wanted to hear for most of my life. Strangely, they did not affect me the way I once imagined. Not because they didn't matter. Because my worth no longer depended on hearing them. I smiled and hugged her anyway. Looking back now, people often ask whether I regret helping Chloe. My answer never changes. No. Because helping her was never about rewarding what she did. It was about refusing to let her choices determine the kind of person I would become. My parents cut me off because of a lie. 5 years later, I became the person standing beside them during their worst moment. Not because they earned it. Because I chose it. And in the end, that choice gave me something I thought I lost forever. Not revenge. Not vindication. Peace. If there is one lesson I learned from this experience, it is this. The truth eventually finds its way into the light. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes years. But it arrives. When it does, you face a choice. You can let the pain define your future, or you can build something better from it. I chose the second path. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But it was worth it. And that decision changed my life far more than the lie ever did.